I went through this a lot when True Colors came out, and I suppose I'm going to have to go through it again with the first 2 episodes of Season 2 of The Owl House. For those of you who have been watching my channel since the True Colors video, you know the drill. For those of you who are new, let me just lay down the ground rules. I am going to be talking about the first 2 episodes of Season 2 of The Owl House, those being 201, Separate Tides, and 202, Escaping Expulsion. These 2 episodes aired in a special Paley Center digital event on the day I'm recording this, that being June the 5th, 2021. These episodes have not otherwise aired elsewhere, so be forewarned. If you do not want to know what is going to happen in these episodes, do not watch this video. Seriously, don't. This is not a joke. If you keep watching, you are going to indeed see what is going to happen in the first 2 episodes of the show. So, there's no excuse. If you want to leave now, go ahead. If you don't, be prepared for what you're going to see. Okay? Okay, we have an agreement. We have finally arrived at the first 2 episodes of Season 2 of The Owl House, and I have to say they both look utterly fantastic. Like, top tier, top 5 episodes. I really do agree with what Dana Terrace was saying in an interview about how the show is really starting to get going from Understanding Willow onward. It's not that the show was bad before, but it did have some rough patches. Thankfully, I think it has moved past those rough patches and is really attuned to the struggles and anxieties of these characters. This episode is a significant step up from the first episode of Season 1, and it does a great job laying the groundwork for Season 2 while acknowledging what happened in Season 1. Acknowledging everything that was lost and everything that has become diffuse. They really deal with all the fallout and all the implications. Characters have been driven apart. Luz is heavily grappling with guilt from what happened in the end of last season. Ida and Lilith both don't know what to do now that they don't have magic. And of course, there are all these new characters hanging around the margins of the show that look like they are going to become increasingly important as Season 2 progresses. In terms of the first episode, Separate Tides, I must draw attention to the character that a lot of fans called Owl Mask or some variation of such when we saw him before, but we have not heard him speak before. We've only seen him in these promos. His actual title in the show itself is the Golden Guardian, and he is quite a bit snarkier than I expected. You see him with his somber owl mask and his majestic cloak, and you think he's going to be this very stentorian, imperious figure like Emperor Belos, but instead he's just someone who loves making a fool of those around him. He's arrogant, but in a funny way, which I really appreciate. Lilith is right when she says that despite all the accolades he's received, he's really just a bratty teenager. But his menace is real. He's not someone to be taken lightly. And because of that, Mix, he really fits this show, which always straddles the edge between serious drama and deflationary satire. It's kind of strange how it does this, both mocking a lot of traditional Portal fantasy magic tropes, while also playing into them, which would appear to have the show working against itself, but it actually works quite well, especially when that dual nature is embodied by characters like this, who are just absolutely fantastic. So charming that it's hard to be angry with him, even though he is kind of terrible. Anyway, in the aftermath of the closing of the portal between the human world and the Boiling Isles, Ida is really struggling to make any money. She can't do magic, and she no longer has access to her supply of human junk, which is not a good thing. It means they're really struggling to make ends meet, so Luz really takes it on herself to provide for the family. She feels terrible, and she takes on the burden of what happened at the end of Season 1 and tries to make it right. She chases a large bounty on a creature and becomes part of the crew of a ship. She becomes a sailor, and she has this really dorky but honestly kind of cool Team Aqua bandana. And, to be quite frank, this is the most I've liked Luz in a while. It's not that she's a bad character, but she has been immature, which is understandable, but she can be a little irritating at times. But here, I definitely think you see her taking some steps forward. While her decision to take all the burden on herself and go it alone is sorely misguided, and Ida has to talk her out of that before she ends up getting herself hurt, it is nice to see her acknowledging the needs and desires of others outside herself. She is very aware, perhaps even more aware than Ida thinks she is. She understands the consequences of what's happened, and she tries to remedy those consequences. Strangely, even though the Boiling Isles starts off perhaps as this escapist fantasy for Luz, it honestly has had the opposite effect on her as she's spent a lot of time here. It's forced her to confront reality. It's forced her to confront the idea that she can't just go around doing random stuff and not expect any of it to rebound on her. She has to really step up and mature and acknowledge the existence of the struggles of other people and try and not just not mess up, but try and help those other people. She's always had a good heart. She's never been a callous person. She's not intentionally selfish, but she is kind of self-absorbed. She only looks at things from her perspective, at least at the start of the show. But as the show has progressed, we see her adopt a wide-angle shot. She sees further now, and that can only be a good thing. Nonetheless, it is still probably for the better that Ida steps in. They meet accidentally when they're looking for the money, but they eventually decide to team up and create an illusion to fool the Golden Guardian so they do not have to kill the creature with the bounty on its head because that creature is innocent, and they repair the relationship between them. The importance of depending on others and the falsehood of self-reliance is also a major theme of the episode's B storyline. This storyline involves Lilith and Hooty, who surprisingly make quite a good team. Their personalities are exactly the opposite, and you would expect them to really get on each other's nerves. You'd especially expect Lilith to not like Hooty, but Lilith is different now. She's humbler. She acknowledges that all her efforts to undo the curse on Ida added up to nothing. Velos was just lying to her. She wants to make amends, and we see her trying her best. She's more reflective, she's more open, she's even looser. No one would ever mistake her for Ida, but she's very much not the very stern, unyielding person we saw at some parts of Season 1. She's more open to making a friendship with Hooty, who she recognizes genuinely does care about her. Yes, Hooty's overbearing, and yes, Hooty can be quite annoying at times, but Hooty genuinely wants to help, and Lilith recognizes that. Lilith really allows Hooty in, and the two of them become close friends, much to the surprise of Ida. It's probably been a long time since she was really used to anyone caring about her. It's hard for her to open up, but she's making an effort to try, even in cases when it's difficult, like with Hooty. But yeah, I love the A-plot and the B-plot. Sometimes Owl House episodes can be kind of uneven in that regard, but here both the plots were very good. I love the animation. I especially love the scenes on the ship. with Luz on the deck, the sea breeze blowing, ruffling her bandana, and the gray waves below her. It's so evocative of adventure and mystery and wonder. I really felt drawn into this show in a way that I didn't oftentimes in Season 1. Again, I liked Season 1 a lot, but Season 2 definitely seems like a significant step up from that. The show has really figured itself out, and while that's clear in this episode, it is even more clear, perhaps, in the second episode of Season 2, that being Escaping Expulsion. Don't worry, Lumity fans, there is a lot of Lumity in this episode. And surprisingly, it's not just from Amity's end. I was expecting some Lumity here, but I wasn't expecting this much. We have confirmation now that Luz has feelings for Amity, which I thought would happen eventually, maybe, but I definitely did not think it would happen this soon. Now, how aware Luz is of her own heart and her own affections is relatively unclear at this point. I doubt she's as aware as Amity. Amity is cripplingly self-aware. Luz can have moments where she has no self-awareness, and honestly, that can kind of balance out at times, but for both their sakes, since they clearly have these feelings for each other, I do hope that Luz realizes the extent of her feelings. Amity saves Luz in this episode while appearing cool and stylish and elegant, which elicits a massive positive reaction from Luz. Now, I will say I do become annoyed when people interpret every little blush in a show as being necessarily romantic, but in this case, there are no two ways to read it. There just aren't. It is extremely straightforward, and as if it weren't clear enough, we see Luz blush again when they're fighting together near the end of the episode. She does not go as bright red as Amity, but there's nothing unclear about this. When she really developed these very strong affections for Amity is unclear, but she does have these affections, and I think she will act on them eventually, or else Amity will. And it's good to know that if Amity does decide to act on these affections, Luz will definitely reciprocate them. This really makes me more excited for the library episode, episode 5 of this season. I was expecting some development of this relationship in that episode, but since this episode, Escaping Expulsion, developed it so much further than I anticipated, it really makes me wonder what they are going to do in the library episode, episode 5. Perhaps there will be a confession, or perhaps not that necessarily. That would be a bit fast, maybe, but since they're both on the same page, more or less, they both have these affections, I don't think it will be that long until one of them acts on these affections. And I can't wait to see what happens then. That is going to be extremely interesting. Also, for all you Lumity fans out there, I feel like I'd be cheating you a bit if I didn't say that there is a moment in this episode where Amity is like, "Stay away from my Luz." My Luz. Yeah, there are no two ways to read that. If Amity is trying to keep her affections secret, she is failing horribly. She's very transparent. Still, I do not want to linger only on Lumity-related topics. The rest of the episode is very interesting, too. We are finally introduced to Amitys parents, Adelia and Alador. They run Blight Industries, a weapons manufacturer. Amity costs her parents a lot of money by prioritizing her feelings for Luz over her duties to her parents. Her parents are reasonably angry at her for this. Now, obviously, I take Amity's side because I don't want to side with weapons manufacturers. Especially ones who are doing so well that they've been able to buy themselves a fancy mansion with all their blood money. And also, they react horribly to Amity's actions by expelling her friends from school against the wishes of the principal of that school. Surprisingly, the principal actually cares for Luz, Gus, and Willow. He is not as crusty as we might have anticipated. He really does miss them. It's a little detail, and perhaps it's overdone a little, but it's nice to see nonetheless. Luz tries a lot of things to try and return her and her friends to school, but all of these attempts fail. So Luz ultimately has no choice other than to take Adelia up on the offer to take Amity's place in the big Blight Industries presentation. This ends up being extremely dangerous for Luz in a way that I at least hope it would not have been this dangerous for Amity. Amity has, for the most part, hesitated from doing anything for Luz because she's scared of her parents, and she's right to be. They're scary people, especially when you think of the power they have over her. But when Luz's life is in danger, Amity can't hold back anymore. She crushes the little pendant that Adelia has been using to telepathically communicate with Amity. And Amity then proceeds to save Luz's life in that stylish display that makes Luz blush like the setting sun. There is no doubt about her affections again. Adelia is upset and she wants to not fulfill her deal to Luz to return Luz and her friends to Hexside, but her husband, who seems to be a more or less decent man, decides that they should keep their deal. Adelia reluctantly agrees, and things maybe go back to normal. It definitely does not feel settled, I will say that. Luz's relationship with the Blights is far from over. I really think that Adelia will have a grudge against her, especially when she learns about the depth of Amity's feelings for Luz. And I feel for Amity. Her relationship with her parents isn't going to be the same. So what will she do now? Who knows? The Blights are crafty. Adelia is not this comically evil supervillain, but she is cruel and manipulative and very clever. Whatever she has in mind for her daughter and Luz, it can't be good. So anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching The Owl House, and make some predictions in the comments below about what will happen next. Will Luz become even closer to Amity? Will Amity stay with her parents? Will she patch things up? Can she patch things up? Would she want to patch things up? And if not, what will she do? Will she go to live with Luz and Ida? I think it's a distinct possibility. What will happen in that library episode? Who knows? So anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Promise y'all that. Thank y'all again. Adios, comrades.